few days later, Friday was unremarkable until the middle of the afternoon when Mr. Edwin Harper experienced something he had not encountered in his documented memory: a broken finger. It happened during the stamping. He habitually stamped each sheet with both a rubber stamp that said filed and an ink stamp that said date. These stamps required different levels of pressure, a fact he understood completely. However, today, as he stamped date, his finger slipped. The stamp slipped, and his thumb landed squarely on the date stamp. The result was a single word, a solid rectangle of ink, and a distinct yelp from Mr. Harper. For a few moments, he looked at the offending hand in disbelief. Then he looked at the stamp, then back at his hand. He could feel a growing warmth in his thumb, and vaguely recall a pain similar to this when he was 7 and ran into a glass door thinking it was a window. He sat there for a minute or two, waiting for something to happen. Finally, Martha appeared at his desk. "Are you all right?" she asked, noticing the hue of his thumb. Well, yes, he stammered, having never been confronted with an unforeseen problem before. "You need the first aid kit," Martha said. Realizing the extent of the situation, she retrieved the kit from the drawer and handed it to him. Inside was a pamphlet titled "Workplace Injuries: What to Do." He flipped through it quickly, finding no mention of accidental inking. "Does it say in there?" Martha asked, peering over his shoulder. "No," he whispered, not wanting anyone else to know about his predicament. "It doesn't say," he said. Martha patted his shoulder awkwardly. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," she said cryptically, as if dealing with ink-stained thumbs was commonplace in their workplace. And with that cryptic reassurance, she retreated back to her desk, leaving Mr. Harper to fend for himself with instructions that failed to address his specific predicament. After a few more minutes of contemplation, and upon observing that no one else seemed concerned about the state of his thumb, Mr. Harper began to take action. First, he carefully detached the stamp from his hand using a piece of printer paper. He pressed the stamp gently onto the sheet to make sure it was ink-free. Next, he flipped through a clean page in the first aid guide, which included a section on basic household materials that could treat minor injuries. "Soap and water," it said, "can help remove most stains." He washed his hand thoroughly in the bathroom sink. He had never washed his hands this vigorously before. It occurred to him that if his thumb had been bitten by a dog instead of inked by a stamp, the procedure might be the same. During the rest of the workday, he continued filing as usual, though he tried to avoid any motions that might accidentally press his thumb onto the desk, which was surprisingly difficult. His thumb hurt less now, but the ink stain did not improve. By the time he arrived home, it was clear the mishap had turned into an unfixable mess. The stamp company's motto was, "Never fades, always precise." The permanence of the stamp was now his own. The sight of his unblemished beige walls spurred him to action. He would Hiram Family for cleaning solutions, searching for something stronger. There were products to remove grease stains from clothes, rust from metal, stickers from cars. None of these were designed to remove ink stains from human skin. His options were limited. The back of the cleaning solution bottle suggested rubbing alcohol. He found a half-empty bottle in the medicine cabinet. Alcohol rubs were good for colds. He had never used one before, but presumably they smelled the same. Pouring a generous amount onto a cotton ball, he proceeded to rub his thumb vigorously as several minutes passed. He began to feel cold, but the ink stain barely seemed to budge. Dejected, he decided to try something else. His gaze fell on the hydrogen peroxide in the corner. He had never used it for anything except cleaning cuts, but desperate times called for desperate measures. He applied it with a cotton swab and waited. The result was a slight lightening of the stain and a strange tingling sensation. Encouraged by this progress, he repeated the process several times. Time passed slowly. With each application, the stain faded a bit more, but it never truly disappeared. After the third or fourth application, he gave up, exhausted. He looked down at his thumb. To his surprise, he could live with a remaining shade of purple, but he also realized he would never get rid of it entirely. He studied his thumb for a long time. In some ways, it was nice to have something different. Now when he shook hands with people at work, they would remember him. He wondered if his thumb would hurt tomorrow. The next day, Saturday, he woke up with a slightly sore thumb. The pain was tolerable. Life was not quiet. A truck-run family somewhere nearby. A neighbor was mowing a lawn. A radio was playing music. Everything was normal. There was a new documentary about ancient Rome on the TV. He watched that instead of reading his book. Sunday was rainy. It had started raining sometime after midnight. When he woke up, the rain had become steady and continuous. He stood at the window and watched it fall. It made him think of other places, of places he had never seen. He considered going somewhere, perhaps a bookstore or a cafe, but then decided against it. He watched the rain fall for a long time. It is safe to say we all wanted to shake up our daily routines every now and then. But what if your whole life revolved around trivial things like where you sit or when you eat your dinner? Welcome to the channel, and today let's look into the life of a man who lived with extraordinary normalcy. Day 1. Friday. Friday started with a gentle nudge. 7 a.m. The clock ticked steadily. Light filtered through the curtains. He woke up promptly. He never set an alarm. He nodded to the newsboy, who returned the gesture with a knowing grin. He preferred the brown eggs, even though they were slightly more expensive. He read the newspaper, savoring each article, each word. Breakfast was cereal, milk to the brim, no exceptions. In the afternoon, he baked bread, following the recipe precisely. He kneaded the dough, watching it transform under his touch. He woke at 7:30 a.m., which felt dangerous. That extra half hour left his head foggy. He brushed his teeth more slowly to make up for it. Tea was back to the proper steeping time. 3 minutes. Everything felt stable again. Breakfast was a hard-boiled egg and toast. No butter. Just egg and dry toast. It was enough. After breakfast, he made a grocery list. Tea, bread, milk, bananas. Dinner was leftovers, reheated and enjoyed just as much as before. In the quiet of the night, he wrote in his journal, recording events that most might consider mundane. He went to sleep at 9:15, reflecting on a day that was simple yet fulfilling. He walked to the park, feeding the pigeons and watching children play. The tea was slightly stronger than usual. He had left the tie bag steeping for 4 minutes instead of 3. He considered pouring it out and starting again, but decided to adapt. It tasted almost adventurous. He made a mental note never to do that again. For breakfast, he had toast, not because he felt like it, but because Friday felt like a toast day. He didn't cut the toast diagonally this time. He bit into it whole. It was not a satisfying experience. He washed his hands 3 times afterward, as the butter had gotten on his fingers. At 8:05 a.m., he checked the mailbox. Empty, but he lingered a second longer. The wind blew once, just once. Then it stopped. At the office, Martha was reading The Librarian Who Knew Too Much. She was on page 1084. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Morning," Edwin replied. Today was the day for updating archive labels. The folders at NT been touched since 2003. One of them still said, "New computers," even though the computers in question had long since stopped being new. Edwin printed new labels. He enjoyed the sound of the label maker. Soft clicking followed by the whir cut of the adhesive strip. At lunch, He tried a yogurt, peach flavor. He had bought it 2 weeks ago and forgotten about it. It was still within date, but it had separated slightly. He stirred it. It looked better. The afternoon was more filing. The pens on his desk remained in color order. At one point, he dropped a paperclip. It landed flat. He picked it up. At 5 p.m., he left the office just as Martha stood up and stretched. He had never seen her stretch before. Walking home, he saw 2 squirrels. One ran. One stood still. This seemed significant, but he wasn't sure why. That evening, he watched a documentary about the invention of zippers. He hadn't known that early zippers used hooks. He said, quietly at one point. Dinner was rice again. No carrots. This time he was out. He slept at 9:15 p.m., but he turned once more than usual. Before settling in, back home, he sorted his mail, discarding the junk and reading the bills. Dinner was fish, baked to perfection. He removed the bone from his plate later, placing it in the bowl of water under the sink. In the evening, he listened to classical music, letting the melodies fill his small apartment. He went to bed at 9:15, reading one last page of his book. He observed the city through the bus window, memorizing the routes and timings of the streetcars at home. Dinner was rice. He cooked it for exactly 80 minutes, poured it into the same bowl, and ate it slowly. Before bed, he read a well-thumbed copy of a classic novel. He slept with the windows open, breathing the night air and dreaming of familiar faces. Night after night, he slept at 9:15 p.m. sharp. At work, he spent his days among files, reports, and forms, each stamped with a date and neatly categorized. Lunch was cheese sandwich, no crusts, with a banana. He avoided the apple core that tempted him from the corner of his eye. Why bother when the first chirp of the morning dove coincided perfectly with the tick of the clock? He made tea, strong enough to stain the cup, but mild enough not to burn his tongue. Breakfast was toast, precisely 1 square inch, cut off the crust, slathered with butter that creaked like an old ship. He walked to work, passing the bakery with the green awning, the florist with the red door, and the newsstand with the latest headlines. After work, he took the same bus, always sitting in the same seat. Day 2, Saturday. Saturday was always a little different, but not too different. Waking up at 7:30 a.m., he made tea, 3 minutes steeped, 4 minutes drunk. Breakfast was eggs, sunny side up, with buttered toast. No crusts, of course. Out on his morning walk, he greeted the baker coming out to collect the morning newspaper. He also exchanged a word with the postman. He did his shopping at the corner store, always buying the same: bread, milk, and eggs. Day 3, Sunday. Sunday was quieter still. He awoke at 7:15 a.m., watching the sunlight paint stripes on his ceiling. He brought a book and sat on a nearby bench, letting the sound of laughter wash over him. Day 4, Friday. Friday began again at 6:59 a.m. This time, Edwin smiled. Balance had returned. Day 5, Saturday. Grocery day Saturday was always different, but not in an exciting way. Day 11, Friday. The left sock dilemma Friday began with a sock crisis. One of Edwin's beige socks was slightly tighter than the other. He didn't notice until he had walked 5 steps. He sat back down and examined it. No holes, just tighter. He considered throwing it away, but that would mean its pair was also useless. So he wore mismatched socks, instead one beige, one light gray. He wore long pants. No one would know. At work, he was nervous. What if someone noticed? No one did. The cover had a man holding an envelope with blood on it. Very dramatic. Lunch was rice and peas. Martha was reading a new book again. Stamps, secrets, and sudden silence. Edwin filed 108 forms. The Thai sock may have increased his focus. Dinner lentils and boiled spinach. Tasted ... green. He went to bed at 9:13 p.m., thinking about buying new socks. Then he decided not to. Day 12, Saturday. The grocery clerk speaks Saturday, grocery day. He woke at 7:28 a.m., shaved, and made his list. Tea, bread, yogurt, rice cans, soup, bananas, crackers, light bulbs. He arrived at Miller's Market at 9:01 a.m. He moved through the aisles with grace, reached for yogurt. A grocery clerk looked at him and said, "Morning." Edwin froze. He had never spoken to this man. Alphabetical order. Beans, corn, peas, soup. "Morning," Edwin replied. The words came out slightly higher than intended. They both nodded. That was it, but the moment lingered. Back home, Edwin rearranged his canned goods, labels facing out. He vacuumed the hallway. There was no visible dust, but he vacuumed anyway. Dinner was spaghetti with butter again. No basil this time. He slept at 9:15 p.m., his heart still lightly thudding from the grocery encounter. Day 13, Sunday. The newspaper that wasn't Sunday morning. A newspaper sat on his doorstep. Edwin did not subscribe to a newspaper. He picked it up cautiously. Belleville Gazette. Dated today. Still warm from the sun. He brought it inside, stared at it on the table, and then opened it to the front page. Town council discusses new paint for benches. He read the whole paper. Classifieds, obituaries, crossword. No mention of who sent it. He folded it and placed it next to his recycling bin, but didn't throw it out. Lunch, soup, dinner soup. Again, at 9:13 p.m., he thought. Maybe the paper will come again. Day 14, Monday. The cloud at 6:59 a.m. He woke up and saw it. A single small cloud in the sky. For 13 straight days, the sky had been clear. He watched it while drinking his tea. The cloud drifted slowly, like it had nowhere to be. At work, he told Martha. There was a cloud today. She blinked really. Yes, he said. Just one. She smiled. Sounds nice. It was their longest conversation in months. Lunch was crackers and yogurt. The cloud was gone by evening, but Edwin still looked for it. He fell asleep early, dreaming of nothing in particular. Day 15, Tuesday. The bag that fell over morning came at 6:59 a.m. As expected, no cloud in the sky today. Tea toast quiet. But just as Edwin was getting ready to leave for work, his grocery bag from Saturday still sitting in the corner with extra canned goods tipped over, a single can of soup rolled out and spun in a lazy circle before stopping against his shoe. It was slow, like a careful collapse. He stared at it, then picked it up and placed it back. He tightened the bag handles into a neater knot. The title was unnecessarily dramatic, in Edwin's opinion. Still, he respected her commitment to themed literature. Walk to work was normal. Sidewalk, dry. Bakery still open. Pet supply store window featured a sale on turtle tanks. Edwin did not own a turtle. At work, Martha had a new book, The Shredder Murders. He even whistled once, not a tune, just a single note. Morning, morning. It didn't move. He walked around it. Filing today was smooth. No jams in the cabinet drawers. A pleasant slide, folder after folder. Lunch was peanut butter crackers. He hadn't packed a banana. On the way home, he saw a leaf fall from a tree and land directly in the center of the sidewalk. Dinner, rice and carrots. He went to bed at 9:15 p.m., wondering vaguely why the can had fallen, then forgot all about it. Day 16, Wednesday. The elevator that worked. Though Edwin rarely took the elevator at work, he noticed today that it wasn't broken. It had been broken for 4 months. He stood in front of it, unsure of how to respond. He pushed the button. The doors opened with a hum. He didn't get in. He just watched it for a moment, then took the stairs as usual. Martha was wearing green today. Her book was Post-it Note Panic. Not unpleasant. Tussed a soft talk when it closed. He opened and shut it 3 more times. Consistent! He nodded at the cover. Is it good? She seemed surprised. It was from a dentist advertising cleanings. With music, he didn't need a cleaning, but he appreciated the attempt. It's okay, she said. a bit slow. Edwin almost said good, but didn't. He just nodded at his desk. One of the drawers made a new sound. Lunch was yogurt and crackers. That evening, he received a flyer in the mailbox. His first mail in weeks. Dinner, toast with cheese. Bedtime, 9:15. As the drawer sound echoed in his head, he whispered, "Ta," then fell asleep. Day 17. Thursday. The unexpected knock at exactly 2:42 p.m. Someone knocked on the office door. No one ever knocked. The receptionist looked up. Edwin looked up. Martha looked up. It was a delivery man. He had the wrong building. Everyone nodded in silence. The man apologized and left. It was the most excitement the office had experienced in over a year. Edwin made a note in his mental journal. Wrong knock. Right mystery. He filed zoning documents for the rest of the afternoon with unusual speed. Lunch was skipped by mistake. He had been thinking about the knock and forgot to eat. Dinner was noodles and peas. Warm. Simple. The knock stayed with him as he drifted to sleep at 9:30 p.m. Day 18. Friday. The clock that ticked louder. Today, the wall clock in the office seemed ... Louder tick, tick, tick. Edwin tried to ignore it, but by 10:23 a.m., he found himself matching his filing speed to the rhythm. Tick, file, tick, stamp, tick, paperclip. It was oddly satisfying. Martha noticed. "The clock's louder today," she whispered. "Yes," Edwin said. "I thought it was just me." "No," she replied. "It's definitely ticking more." He wasn't sure what to say next, so he said, "Maybe it's proud." She smiled. Maybe they didn't speak again until the end of the day. Lunch, rice, and banana. Dinner, 2 slices of toast, one slightly burnt. The smoke alarm beeped once. It startled him. He opened the window. Bedtime was exactly on time. Tick, 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 sleep. Edwin noticed that the curtain in the living room was slightly off. Day 19, Saturday. The curtain adjustment after his usual breakfast and shopping trip. He had never noticed it before. He stood up, pulled the right side an inch over, then stepped back. Better. It looked. He stared for a full minute, then moved it back, then back again. Finally, he left it slightly open in the middle, forming a triangle of sunlight on the carpet. He sat in the light for 10 minutes. The grocery list had been short today. Bread, milk, bananas, soap funnel. Dinner was a new experiment. Toast with yogurt. It was not successful. He brushed his teeth longer than usual. Bedtime was 9:12. Day 20, Sunday. The quietest day, nothing happened. Truly, nothing. No bird noises. No traffic. No flyers. No clouds. No people. Edwin sat by the window for 3 hours and heard nothing but his own breathing. Lunch, soup, dinner, soup. He wrote nothing in his notebook that night. Just stared at the page. He turned off the light 2 minutes early, saying out loud. That was very quiet. He wasn't sure who he was talking to. Day 21. Monday. The perfect circle at breakfast. Edwin spilled a drop of tea. It landed on the table in a perfectly round circle. He stared at it, then got a tissue and wiped it gently. At work, Martha had a new book. "Staple me twice." He asked, "What's that one about?" She said, "Office worker uncovers a hidden code in a supply closet." He nodded slowly. "Sounds realistic," she grinned. At 3:00 p.m., the sun came through the window and lit up his desk. He didn't move. He just sat in the light for 8 minutes. Dinner, rice and lentils. Before bed, he checked his calendar. Nothing planned. Nothing needed. He smiled and whispered, "Good." Then turned off the light. Day 22, Tuesday. The spoon that bent Edwin woke up at 6:59 a.m. Again, when he stirred his tea that morning, he noticed the spoon had a slight bend. Not dramatic, just the tiniest curve at the neck. He tried another spoon. Perfectly straight, he held both side by side, comparing their. The bent one looked tired. He kept using it anyway, at work. Martha was not at her desk. This was unusual. By 9:17, she walked in. Traffic light was stuck on red, she said. Edwin nodded. She was reading Binder Clips and Bloodshed. The title was a bit much. Edwin gave it a slow, polite nod. Lunch. Peanut butter sandwich. The squirrel was back again after days of absence. This time, it stared at Edwin before hopping across the road. Dinner? Boiled potatoes, overcooked by 3 minutes. He didn't mind. He went to sleep at 9:14, the bent spoon resting in the sink. Day 23, Wednesday. The surprise hiccup while alphabetizing old archive slips. Edwin hiccuped loudly. He startled himself. Martha looked up. "You okay?" "Yes," he said, surprised. "It's just a hiccup." She nodded. "Sounds painful." It wasn't, but it was unexpected. He got 2 more over the next 10 minutes. Then nothing. It became the highlight of his day. Edwin couldn't recall the last time he'd heard it. The hum was satisfying. Lunch, crackers, and a banana. Afternoon work was briefly interrupted by the sound of someone using the shredder. Then twice. Dinner, lentils and peas. Spoon still bent. Bedtime. 9:15. The ending was boring, she said. Day 24, Thursday. The lamp flickered at 7:12 p.m. Edwin's reading lamp flickered once. No banana. He had run out. He didn't panic. He simply made a mental note. He turned it off, waited 10 seconds, and turned it back on. No more flickers. Brown, dry, with a small curl. He watched it for a full minute before relaxing. Work was normal. Martha had reached the end of a current book. "That's good," Edwin replied. "Keeps expectations low." She smiled. At lunch, he had yogurt. On the walk home, he saw the first fallen leaf of the season. He didn't pick it up, but he looked at it for a while. Dinner soup. He slept early. 9:13 p.m. Day 25. Friday. The sticker on his shoe as he left home. Edwin noticed something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. It was a small square label. Blank, white, clean. He peeled it off and placed it in his pocket. At work, the label sat on his desk all day. He didn't throw it away. He just let it sit. Martha didn't bring a book today. "Taking a break," she said. "What will you do instead?" she thought. "Nothing. Sounds restful," he replied. They both nodded. Lunch. Bread with butter. The label stayed in his pocket all evening. After dinner, he stuck it inside the back of his notebook. He labeled it "Found," but unassigned. Sleep came gently. Day 26. Saturday. The bookstore visit for the first time in 4 years. Edwin visited a bookstore. It wasn't planned. He had finished dusting early and didn't feel like staring at the wall. The bookstore smelled like quiet paper. He didn't browse the fiction or history. He went straight to the back. Hobbies and miscellaneous. He bought one book. Intro to Stamp Collecting. The Slow Man's Guide. It was $5.98. He paid with exact change, but the idea of tiny, uniform rectangles with history behind them made him feel peaceful. At home, he read the first 12 pages. He didn't own any stamps yet. Dinner, toast and tea, very light dinner. He slept at 9:11 p.m., thinking about stamps with birds on them. Day 27, Sunday. The day of rearrangement. Edwin rearranged the kitchen drawer. For years, the drawer had hosted utensils with no order. Today, he made a change. Forks left, spoons middle, Knives, right. The bent spoon stayed in a separate section. It had earned its uniqueness. He labeled each section using scraps of masking tape, then closed the drawer and opened it again just to admire the organization. At lunch, he read more about Stampities. He discovered there were water-activated gums and pressure-sensitive stickers. He whispered, "Fascinating." Dinner, a soft egg and toast. Before bed, he drew a rectangle in his notebook. It was meant to represent his first imaginary stamp. Day 28. Monday. The final perfectly average day. 6:59 a.m. wake up. Tea steeped. Exactly 3 minutes. Toast. Triangle cut. He walked to work without incident. There was no squirrel today, but the air smelled faintly of wet leaves. Martha brought in a new book but didn't open it. Instead, she asked, "How was your weekend?" Edwin paused, then said, "I bought a book about stamps." She raised her eyebrows. "Are they exciting?" "No," he said. "That's why I like them." She smiled. "That makes sense." Lunch was peanut butter and yogurt, an odd pairing, but oddly satisfying. The walk home felt slow, not lazy, just intentional. At home, he wrote a single line in his notebook. "Greater than nothing happened today," and it was beautiful. Dinner was plain rice with butter. Before bed, he stared at the ceiling and smiled. 9:15 p.m. lights off. The week was over. The life continued. Still, simple, steady, and Edwin Harper liked it that way.